Excuse me, Ricardo. If you are talking to us, you are muted. Hi, nice to meet you.
How about now? You hear me?
No. Yes, it seems like.
Is that good?
Now we can hear you. Thank you.
Now you can hear me. Thank you very much. And it should be recording
From here, I think. Oops.
Yes, the recording has started, so
Okay,
you are
good.
recording,
Perfect.
and now we have sound. Great.
Thank you very much, Marie.
No problem.
So I have also a background in teaching, as I said, in math and languages. I can teach language, Spanish and Italian up until high school, and mathematics. But I also retrained when I moved to Norway as a psychologist within family and development is basically my background. But I work in, as you can see, a lot of different sports. I do also work as a performance psychologist or sports and exercise psychologist in different sports. I'm also a former athlete, if you can tell by my beautiful physique. I am the model that the Leonardo da Vinci showed, and played a lot of sports myself. So and use the sporting arena as a place where I actually can learn and apply my knowledge and different things. I work in different domains also, both with businesses, military, and schools, where I apply whatever you hear me talk about cybersecurity and what I do in cybersecurity. I do exactly the same things in these domains also. I don't do anything different. So everything I do is basically generic, and I can just apply it to different domains, and that's the cool of it. And I do work with oops, that's going too fast. I do work with also elite athletic clubs around the world in different sports, and these are some of my collaborations that I have in there. And may not seem like they're for cybersecurity and maritime, but for example, with Liverpool and Leicester, I am working on developing mental health, digital mental health modules for athletes. So that's very applicable also to maritime personnel. So like I said, everything I do there is what I do here. So yeah, that's my background. Like I said, in psychology, and also a lecturer and a researcher and applied practitioner. I've been here at the Estonian Maritime Academy for 1 year now. So basically last week, the 1st of March was my 1 year anniversary here. And I've been working within cybersecurity since 2016, and it was by an accident across the street from where I live in Norway, where I worked in the Norway University of Applied Sciences. There is the Norwegian Cyber Defense Academy, and they came and asked us questions about what they were doing with their cadets. And all of a sudden, a lot of research rolled out from that. And that's also where I did my PhD on the Norwegian Cyber Defense Academy people. Just going to present you some of the projects that I've been working on that have just been finished, where Taltech is a partner. So the Advances project, which is led by Vilnius University. We've had also other members of staff such as Tia and Anu working on this project. This just finished in 1st of January. And we had objectives to advance the performance of cybersecurity specialists by identifying possible improvements from 3 different perspectives. We looked at the biological aspects, so genetics. We looked at the behavior patterns, and then we also looked at the necessary knowledge and skills of the cybersecurity specialists, and how we could help them learn better. That was granted by the EEA project, Norway grants. There's a current project also going on with Taltech. It's called the Acticom. This is actually held by NTNU and Østfold University College in Norway. And there we're looking at aspects to provide common protocols and standards for the improve the change of cyber threat information between individuals and organizations experiencing cyber incidents. So basically looking at communication or collaboration at the tactical levels, and communication in between groups and within organizations and between organizations. This project will be ending at the end of the summer, so September 1st. But it's come up with a lot of stuff that we can use here at the Maritime Academy also. And also there's been people that have been working with us, again, Tia, working on this project with us. Currently, I am working on the CyberSec Pro project, which is a Digital Europe program, started for 2022, December 2022. And we're 15 higher education institutions across Europe. and 13 companies. And our goals are basically to map out cybersecurity education that is provided within Europe, and then make offerings that can be taken to European citizens to improve their cybersecurity competences and skills. So we are in the process of developing and implementing modules for different cybersecurity aspects, such as risk management, human factors, penetration testing, and so on. So if you're interested, I can also show you where, if you go on the CyberSec Pro project and you're interested in training in cybersecurity, you can sign up for trainings and find some free trainings there offered by different universities and so on. I'm also starting with the Athena project. This one just actually started right before the new year, where we are one of the partners together with other companies and institutions across Europe. But we're looking at the improving cybersecurity protection and readiness of the waterway sector, and basically looking at OT personnel and how to get them cybersecurity education that they need, since they are now a group that is at risk for being attacked. And for the Netherlands, this is a critical infrastructure, and so we need to reinforce their cybersecurity competencies. So we are developing training modules, both with AR, VR, and digital implementations to help OT personnel, which will then also be applicable to maritime domains in better cybersecurity awareness and prevention. And also there we have 2 PhDs that were hired on the project. I forgot to say, on CyberSec Pro, we have 2 PhDs on that project. One of them is Ahmed, working on it with Vanessa. Vanessa and Trine are the 2 PhD projects, 2 PhDs on this project with Athena. And hopefully in the very near future, they will be presenting at a research seminar their projects and their findings. So that'd be very interesting. So they're basically with Tia and myself in developing AR, VR technology educational approaches. It's going to be very, very interesting. My research is in human factors, psychology on mostly on that side. I do have a lot of research going on human-computer interaction, but also human-robotic interactions. Within cybersecurity, I do a lot on performance and behaviors, a lot within cyber defense, on psychological aspects of it, education and training, individual and team factors, and also communication, decision-making, and other aspects. So a lot within cybersecurity in my research there. But I also look at health. I have created also cybersecurity for mental health for cybersecurity that I've been teaching, and I've taught in 2 of the classes here at Caltech, and hope to take it even further. And I also look at performance aspects that can be related. I am also I'm on the board of the conference for the Augmented Cognition, which runs parallel with the human-computer interaction conferences that happen every year. It's one of the biggest conferences within human computers interactions, and there's about 2,500, 3,000 participants. And we've been having parallel sessions since 2016, where these are some of the topics that we have this past year. Our session has, we hope to win also this year, but our session and our papers have been winning best papers at the conferences the past few years, and hopefully we can keep our streak alive on this. This year will be in Washington, D.C. From the end of June to the beginning of July. My research approach is, like I said, if there's anything here that ticks a box for you and you are interested, please contact me. I would love to talk about it and see what we can do. But I do performance. I've highlighted some keywords like workloads and judgments of performance, or metacognitive aspects of things. Something I can discuss with you later on. I look at psychological variables such as confidence or self-efficacy, metacognition. Also look at education and training development. I'm also specialized in evaluating educational designs and if they're actually effective in teaching in long-term aspects. And like I said before, I have very adaptable approaches. What I do in sports is what I do in schools, is what I do in cybersecurity, and it's just very easy to adapt and implement in different domains. The research we have is giving strong longitudinal effects. So it's not just certain quick effects we're getting. We're seeing how what we implement, for example, sticks with people over the long run at all three levels. So individual, social, and organizational aspects. We'll also look at cyber defense and cyber defense or cyber exercises and so on. And also, like I said, I do have a background in educational and training design, and I've been implementing that. And the Athena project is focused on exactly that, implementing the educational design and also implementing evaluations to see how long-term learning comes out of that. So within the maritime, the digital transformation is set to play a key role in shipping and for shipping companies in the future. And the maritime industry is now anticipating extensive digitalization processes with a great degree of certainty. Basically, digitalization of maritime is happening. It's can't be stopped. It's going to be more and more, and with the new emerging technologies, they'll be integrated at faster speeds. And one of the biggest challenges is, are the personnel who are working there able to learn what's changing around them fast enough, which is probably one of the interesting aspects of things. So it refers to organizational changes caused by digital technologies, which lead to a redefinition of existing businesses' capabilities, processes, and relationships. It's behind already other sectors, as people who work here in maritime know better than I do. It's behind other sectors, and its importance is becoming very, very big. Shipping already is a volatile industry, and the new technologies are being implemented in IT and OT convergence. And it applies in eight domains, where one of them is digital security, where my research focus comes into. And this already lacks research. So basically, human factors in maritime research for cybersecurity basically started 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, not too long ago. So we are very, very far behind many other domains, hopefully catching up pretty fast. So what are human factors? Easily said, the nice definition there, but it's environmental, organizational, job factors, individual and social factors, and look how they all interact with each other. That's basically what it comes down to. We look at the job. So what kind of job is there? Its demands, its tasks, what kind of psychological factors it would need, for example, how much attention would it require from people, so workloads, and so on. We look at the individual and their competencies, their skills, their personality, and their approaches. We look at attitudes and risk perception. And one aspect that's actually often overlooked across domains, not just within maritime, is actually the organization. If we want the biggest effects, it's easier to work with organizational levels because once they have it in policies and in, for example, leadership, then it's easier to institute behaviors at the lower levels. So this is a slide that I find amazing. But most of the accidents that happen within maritime are human error. We're talking just regular safety in maritime right now. And the desired outcomes, for example, of digitalization is operational efficiency, improved safety, environmental sustainability, reduce costs, of course, make it more profitable. But the challenges, as we're seeing also with maritime personnel, and especially within cybersecurity, is people are resistant to change. Nobody wants to do something new. But once we get in a job, we like to do whatever we like to do. And if you're going to give me something new to do, I don't want to do it. It's being human at its best. There's a high initial investment, so having to train people up at the bottom, from the bottom up, it's a high cost. A lot of companies and organizations don't want to spend these costs. The learning curve is low, and the training needs are high. So it takes some time for this to be implemented, and it takes some time for this to be understood and used daily. And on top of all of that, the cybersecurity risks. So now just being a maritime, now being maritime personnel involves having competencies and skills with IT. You have to have that, and also understanding how technologies can impact, for example, your everyday life on a ship. So everybody has phones today. Everybody brings their mobile phones on the ships. They are connected to the internet, and just that in itself poses different cybersecurity risks, which can be a whole course in the Dan's trying to teach and how to become better at cybersecurity while being a seafarer. So there's a need for new definitions. So what is human factors and what is safety these days? So the old definition of safety, not just physical safety, but also cybersecurity, has to be incorporated into that. So maritime cybersecurity is the ability to protect or defend the use of cyberspace from cyber attacks. And in ENISA, the key findings from 2011 for maritime is that cybersecurity 12 years ago, 13 years ago was already at the low, very low, or almost non-existent. So there's no publicity for cybersecurity incidences back then, and the absence of mechanisms to identify the incidences were in place. It's gotten better today. There's come out new policies and procedures based on the ENISA findings that, but we'll see. We'll talk about that here in a second and see how recent those actually were. It's nothing new. So that's just basically 80% of all safety incidents are human errors again. So what are the developments? This came out in 2021. So there's the Baltic and International Maritime Council back in 2021 to identify threats, vulnerabilities, and assess risk exposure, develop protection and detection measures, establish contingency plans, respond to and recover from cybersecurity incidences. This is for maritime. And there's also the Maritime Cyber Risk Assessment that came out in 2019, which is a model-based framework and has been developed for the quantification and promotion of maritime cyber risks for navigation systems, positioning systems, communication and network systems, cargo machinery, and the human factor. So this is now 2019 that these recommendations came out, and it's only 5 years ago that we've identified that humans also in maritime need to be trained for cybersecurity. So the first, there's a second EU ENISA Maritime Cybersecurity Conference was hosted in 2022, so 2 years ago. And the third one hopefully gets hosted this year coming. So we're just looking basically at the last 4 years of cybersecurity in the maritime domain, which has gotten some focus from at the EU level. So when we look at human technology interaction in the maritime, we look at human factors and interfaces and interactions designs, basically what we call cognitive ergonomics. Many of it is pretty much standardized these days, but as new technologies emerge, we're seeing that actually improved cognitive ergonomics to fit the user will actually have better results in the long run. So not the main one size fits all, but what fits me so I can work better in those domains. Mm-hmm. And also the usability of digital technologies, and also the cybersecurity aspects around that. What are the threat vectors that can be attacked on any IT system, and how can they be assessed and mitigated in case there is anything there. And also training and skill development. So this with IT and OT convergence basically has to have cybersecurity at all levels. So their awareness has to be at the individual level and how their behaviors can affect it. They have to understand social and environmental aspects and how, for example, can their immediate surroundings impact their cybersecurity, and also at the organizational level, both policies, but also how leadership supports and helps develop cybersecurity awareness behaviors. So what are the challenges? Human aspects, basically, all of it. There's an increased workload. So where they were seafarers before, now they are seafarers plus IT specialists. And now they've also become IT security specialists to some degree. So we are increasing the workload of what was once an easier job to do, which didn't involve these IT technologies. This increases fatigue, this increases stress, this increases burnout, this increases mental health aspects that are often overlooked. There's a need for training, and what kind of training is actually good. Today we have, let's get them training, and the trainings are marginal at best, and the effect sizes, as in other domains, people learn. They've learned how to not click on phishing mails, and then 2 weeks later, they're just clicking phishing emails just like they were before. So those effects of that training are not present at all. So how can we change that? And also we have modern educational challenges. People like to sit online and then learn, or be less bothered, or probably do it on the phone, which is not the best medium to do training on. Already it distracts us. So for example, more and more trainings modules are being developed for mobile phones and mobile technologies, but they are the worst to learn off of, just because of its distractibility and it's very, how bad it is to see on it, basically. We also have to look at social aspects and the need for shared situational awareness. So what is situational awareness? In the human aspects, that's a whole lecture. If you guys want to have that one, come with me next semester. My human aspects class, we'll talk about situational awareness and shared situational awareness. But we need to understand how people who work together have cybersecurity aspects that involve all of them, and that everybody needs to be aware and have the same understanding of those risks and vulnerabilities, and then also communicate these and so on. So we also need that user experience, and interactions have to happen. And one of the biggest problems is organizational culture, which comes at the organizational level, where, for example, cybersecurity maybe isn't as appreciated as it should be by leaders. Understandably, also, they also have different aspects that they have to worry about, such as leading a crew on some seas. And cybersecurity probably isn't their first thought in their head when they have other risks and dangers out there. But there is also a lack of insight at the technical level. So often, and the people I work with, for example, the decision makers can't understand why people at the tactical level or the technical level cannot communicate very well upwards. But it's also the other way around, where leaders have difficulty communicating with people at the technical and tactical levels, and need to understand that maybe they also need to change their vocabulary. It's not a one-way street. And one of the best and effective ways for improving communication is actually having communication training at all levels, which should be communicated, how it should be communicated. So having situational awareness and how to communicate that understanding of what's happening around you at the different levels. That's one of the challenges we have across domains. So this difficulty, for example, is no different for me in when coaches need to communicate with players, and players want to communicate with coaches, and those communications roads get broken down because they don't understand what the other person wants to hear. So having training with players is exactly the same as having training with seafarers, and having training with coaches is exactly the same as having training with deck leaders, and so on. So ENISA in 2020 came out with their policies for cyber risk management for ports. And in phase 2 of that is identifying and evaluating cyber-related risks, or basically the identification of possible threats to the assets and infrastructure and the likelihood of their occurrence, in order to establish and prioritize security measures. So we have to identify weaknesses, including human factors in the infrastructure, policies, and procedures. For example, policies and procedures for communication are not well defined and declared, and that can cause problems. And that's already in 2020. It's only 4 years ago. And in 2019, Port Cybersecurity was also delivered by NISA, and they also identify social engineering and especially phishing, which is one of the most common ways to attack humans today, and basically how humans can be used as threat entrances to systems to then cause problems for organizations. Just today, talking with some of the PhD students I'm working with, like Ahmed and Vanessa and Trin, and basically finding out how easy it is to use open source intelligence and how that can be used against seafarers is quite amazing, and how accessible it is, and the damage it can do is pretty big. But I am. So I'm not going to be doing this part too much. I'm going to jump over to some of my research here now. But basically, the human factors of maritime, it's important. Of course, it's important. But we need to establish standards, procedures, and best practices. It's funny, it's not just maritime, it's across domains. I just did this also with the Norwegian telecommunications company and their cyber defense exercise. And it's amazing that even in such well-organized places as the telecom industry, procedures and policies for communications of cyber threats is not present at all. So everybody uses their own way, and it's all confusing for everybody. We also have a need for balancing technological innovations with human considerations, both for health and safety, but also in design, usability, and interaction, but also in cybersecurity. So, for example, if I wanted to do something designed for myself, if you don't know me, I love orange. Orange is fantastic. And if you want to get a message over to me really fast, if you put it in orange, I will find it immediately. And on the other side, you can attack me by using orange. You give me an orange USB stick, my interest is piqued, and I'll put it in the first computer I can to find out what's on there. So it can be used also against you. So that's just how we can use human factors in this. So designing, for example, interactions or screens that fit the user is very important. So it can help, for example, in reducing cybersecurity risks. So what are the solutions and recommendations? Create effective training programs. What are effective training programs? Like I said, the ones that are delivered today are horrible in many instances. Most businesses who deliver human factors and cybersecurity training programs will never give you their data on how good their programs work. They'll show you a pre-post, and they'll show you the nice graph of how good it goes right after you're done, but they never show you what happens 3 to 6 months later, which usually is back to baseline, and the problems just are back to where they were before. But how can we design effective training programs where learning effects last over a long time? We also have to have a human-centered design approach. How are people going to learn better? We can't just say, hey, there's a digital course, or there's a VR course, or there's an AR course. This will be fun for you, go take it. It may not fit that person and then the way they learn, and maybe there's different ways to address other people. And one of the biggest aspects is also changing organizational culture. If we can change culture at the decision-making level, it's easier to implement cybersecurity awareness trainings at the lower levels. This is one of the hardest things to do. It's basically trying to tell a leader who's been leading for many years that they need to change their ways so that the people can learn better. How this works in other domains, I'll give it really quick. I was working in a sporting domain where athletes were hockey prospects, and their coach used a lot of sarcasm in the way he was teaching. So that was a good play, right? When a mistake happened. And the funny thing is, he used this all the time. And a lot of people use sarcasm to lead and to teach in schools. Sarcasm is understood by maybe 30% of the adult population. Okay, so already 70% of adults do not get sarcasm right off the bat. We're using this on kids daily in schools, and these were elite athletes. And when I asked the students or these athletes, what do you think about this coach? And they said, he talks very condescending to us. He's not talking nicely to us. I was like, he's sarcastic. It's pretty obvious. I mean, you guys are 16, 17, 18-year-olds, elite athletes. With sarcasm you don't understand. So luckily they said that. I went back to the coach, and luckily this coach was very open to it. And I could tell him, hey, listen, your sarcasm is not being well received. They don't understand it. And then I would tell him about sarcasm is only understood by 30% of the athletes. And he's one of the good coaches. He changed. He was able to change. His coach ratings went up. The players loved him at the end of the year. So they hated him at first, and then they loved him at the end of the year. And he never used sarcasm again. But maybe he did, but it didn't come out in those important areas. So it's very easy to change the culture if the leaders are on board. But working in schools, working with teachers, working with experts, I know best. You can't change the way I do things, and it becomes very tough. They don't want to implement it. And plus, they hired me, for example, to consult and help the lower level people change their behaviors. And they don't want to hear that, hey, if I change my behaviors, I'm going to help everybody change, because there's nothing wrong with me, something wrong with them, which is not true at all. So that's one of the biggest challenges we have, but it's also one of the biggest solutions if we want to do that. So, for example, if we want to have a better cybersecurity culture in organizations, we train now leaders and decision makers to become role models of the behaviors that they want for cybersecurity, to publicly display them, to publicly express support on doing mistakes, for example. It's okay to click a phishing email. It's not okay to click. What's not okay actually is not communicating it. And then they go in and say, hey, and you communicate it to me. We won't get mad that you clicked. We can understand your stress. You have deadlines. It's Christmas time. Your kid's sick, whatever it is. But if you tell us, then we can fix it. If you don't tell us, things happen and it becomes worse. So having a buy-in from leadership is one of the biggest, easiest interventions, but also hardest to implement. So this is going to be part of it. So, for example, in the Athena project, we will also be training leaders of OT personnel in communication of cybersecurity and their culture, and becoming role models for the behaviors that they want. That's going to be interesting. And this is also what we did with the Acticom project and still doing. Just to let you know, I do work with some big networks within cybersecurity. One of them is Professor Ninetta Polemi at UPRC in Greece. She works closely with NATO. She works closely with ENISA in writing policies. She's one of our major collaborators in Athena. I'm sorry, in CyberSec Pro. But I'm also doing other projects with her on developing cybersecurity education. She's also going to welcome my PhD student, Vanessa, there in April. I'm very happy that Vanessa is going to meet Ninetta, and she's open for collaborations and does lots of good work, and will make available her network for if you guys have any research interests. She's very focused in the maritime. So she has a book, for example, on maritime cybersecurity that we use here at the school actually also. And then there's also Professor Socrates Katsikas, who is very big within cybersecurity and is the leader for the Center for Cyber Information Security at NTNU in Norway, and also the leader of the Critical Infrastructure and Security and Resilience. We also have a lot of projects with NTNU already and his group. If you were at the research meeting last week, Ahmed is his postdoc student, and I was also his postdoc student recently for this. But we have a lot of projects. Their center is open for collaboration with us for data collection, testing out new aspects and everything possible. So if you guys are interested in this and want to expand your networks, these are places that can also help you with that. So some research and approaches on what I do. Like I said, I look at basically on the right side, our psychological aspects. So basically workload, stress, vigilance, cognitive factors, attention, metacognitive understanding of one's way of acting and so on. We can look at personality, expertise, and so on. And on the left side, this is basically the situational awareness approach. So basically, what do people see? What do they know? And what do they think will happen in future states, in future outcomes? And then we look at how the cognitive and psychological factors influence that whole process. Also influence how people communicate and how people then make decisions based on what they see, know, and think about what will happen. So increased stress, for example, people will see less, understand less, and give you less possible outcomes. So we try to mitigate that with giving them different ways of fighting that stress, that external stress through. Easiest way is communicating with other people, sharing of ideas. But usually when we get stressed, the opposite happens with us. We don't communicate as much. And then we can also look at this at the more social and organizational level. So we can, for example, we've done also projects that look at how leadership influence stress levels in people who then perform worse under cyber defense exercises. So bad leadership leads to more stress, which leads to worse cybersecurity behaviors. And also we look at how communication of, for example, the situational awareness aspect can be communicated better depending on who you're talking to. So if a technical person is going to communicate with the decision maker, what should they include, what should they not include, and how should they show it? So don't include so much technical information, talk more about supply chain and how that gets disrupted and how that will impact final outcomes. That's what decision makers want to know. The technical stuff, all the technical people want to know. So we change in that sense. So this is basically the model that we use to research across different exercises and different groups. We do also look at cognitive factors. So one of our papers was looking at what we call binocular rivalry. So basically what you see, you have a preference in your vision field. Some people like the left eye, some people like the right eye more. So whatever you can see, for example, comes in, you will have a bias on looking at that information. So it's just not in your visual field, but it's also in your, this is say easy brain in that sense. So your biases will influence how you're going to think. So basically we looked at that and this is just background on this cognitive factors and how this happens. So what do people see and how do people see it? So basically we want to look at attention narrowing and the mechanism behind that and basically how can that be influenced. So for example, positive feelings and so on. So within weight loss, for example, people look at food differently than people who don't struggle with weight. They look at it as how good it can be, with how it'll make me feel and everything like that. While people who don't struggle with weight loss will look at it for, oh, it's made of flour, it's made of sugar, which causes a different bias towards food. So people who are for example, trying to lose weight will focus on food, and people who are not trying to lose weight will not focus on food. Right, so that bias is there. So this happens across the companies. We looked at, for this project here, we looked at political orientation and how can that make us become cybersecurity risks. So people who are more conservative are more open to being fooled by deep fakes and believing their content. Okay, this came out of studies from the US, basically from a couple of years ago. This was replicated in Nature. This is with a European group, so this is no difference. We're no different from the Americans. The more conservative we are, the more we're going to fall for deep fakes, which is a form of social engineering, and the more we're going to believe what's said into those deep fakes. And that is just because our top-down processes, our cognitive biases of how we believe politics should be, influence how we see the videos coming out at us. Okay, so just to let you know. Also looking at devices, people think they're very good at identifying deep fakes. We're actually very bad at it. And we're even worse when we use mobile phones. Mobile phones are probably the worst technology to use for anything we're trying to get information on. It is the worst because it involves having so many distractions and so many other things that, for example, it's better to use a laptop than it is a computer to do to identify these things. So reduce the screen size, the worse we get, because yes, it's harder to see, but we also try to multitask more. We also looked at cognitive styles. So basically what we call field dependent or field independent. Are we more focused on the details or are we more focused on social aspects? And when we looked at this, we saw that, for example, females are better at recognizing deep fakes. They just are. Us guys, we're not as good. There's lots of research behind that. What do guys look at when they're looking at a face? Okay, we're not. So, for example, from research I've done a few years ago, females who put makeup on are actually putting makeup on for other females, not other males, because they're trying to outcompete the other female to get the male attention. But the males aren't looking at the makeup or those things; they're just looking at not the face. So, but the question became, why do females identify deep fakes better? Well, they're more active in processing facial features, both at the detail level. So the people who are more field independent, who look at very details, they look at more details in the face and the facial expressions, and in the field independent, dependent level, they're also better at it because they look at more social aspects of communication. Guys aren't that good at social aspects of communication. So that's why tell a guy, if you're going to communicate with them, just tell them something straightforward. It's an easier way of identifying information. But females are a lot better at identifying deep fakes than guys are. Okay. So something to think about. We also looked at the IT personnel. IT personnel, this is one of the factors that we look at. It's not just IT personnel, this is everywhere, but we look at overconfidence. IT people are very confident in their skills, very hard-headed too on top of it. There's some personality makeups there that are very fun to look at. But are IT people better at cybersecurity identification than non-IT people, right? We'd like to hope so. And then the other question was, are cybersecurity experts better than non-cybersecurity experts at identifying deep fakes? We look at deep fakes again because those are very interesting. This was done with Stefan and other fun. So this was a student project. They created deep fakes and everything like that and so on. And we created some scales on how to measure it. And not hard to do, like I'm saying. This is not hard to do for us in social sciences. And we created this, what we call the overconfidence score. So how many defects do you think you recognize? How confident are you in that? And then we look at people who are overconfident and we look at people who are underconfident. So we want to look at those people there. So when we look at the deepfakes rated real, so people who believe there were deepfakes, yes, the IT personnel scored slightly better than the non-IT people, but this is not a significant finding. As you can see, the confidence intervals were way too big for the non-IT people. So they did not detect deepfakes better than non-IT people. Okay. So IT is not a protective factor. So what is it then? So we also looked at the overconfidence scores though, but the IT people, we can see that they're overconfident. So one is I'm sorry, the more higher up we go, the more overconfident we are. So, and the lower we go is under confident. So at 2.0, that's 100% confident in your skills, and closer to 1.0 is I'm not so confident. And then we can see here, IT people are pretty fairly confident in their skills at detecting, even though they weren't better detectors, but they say they're going to detect more. It's not a significant difference because of the confidence intervals, of course, but just the averages were kind of interesting to see in all of this. So then we started looking at cybersecurity experts. So what is there a difference between cybersecurity experts and non-cybersecurity experts? This involves everybody. And when they were supposed to identify deep fakes, the cybersecurity experts did score a little bit slightly higher by 1 point. We're not talking big numbers here. But we want to look at that overconfidence score. And that's where the scary part comes in. So cybersecurity specialists, and we know this, when we tell IT people and cybersecurity specialists, we're going to attack you, they become overconfident. And that is a way of making them actually a big risk in cybersecurity. They miss things, they perform worse, and so on. So I like to read the citation there says, knowledge never prevented a single breach. You can know as much as you want, it's not going to help you, especially when we know that if we activate your biases, we can make you do worse. Okay. So then we look at gender, and especially on the overconfidence scale. So females look at as you can see on the right graph, then this became significant. Females did better on identifying deepfakes, but were also less confident than their male counterparts by a lot. So the males said they were going to find a lot, they're going to do good, very, very confident in it. They actually did worse than the females and were just very egotistical about it. And that is a bias. That is a trait that the males have in general about certain things, and that can be used against them. And that's why you need to train on how to become more metacognitively aware of one's knowledge and skills. And that is something that's very difficult to do. It's not something that we can do right away. It has to go through reflection. It has to go through feedback. It's quite a complex way. So when we looked at it and we looked at when we separated the not overconfident group versus the overconfident group, we could see that the non-overconfident group, so the people who weren't too confident, way outperformed by a lot the confident group. And that's so confidence isn't always a positive thing. Having good, humble understanding of one's skills and knowledge makes you less confident in your skills. It humbles you down, saying, okay, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, and that's just something I should understand. Okay, so these are fun projects. Talking about metacognition, so this was done with a colleague in Lithuania. He's working at the military academy there, and basically we had a classroom of kids, their first year at the military academy, and we separated them. So this is a quasi-experimental design, and we wanted to teach metacognition to one group and just let the other group just do whatever they did everyone. Everything else was controlled for. But they just got split up. The first class, they had one lesson in what metacognition is, and then they had one extra assignment to do. And that was read an article and about being reflective and everything like that. Everything else was exactly the same. Same lecturers, same classes, they were in the class together, and so on. So metacognition is one of the key factors I look at and try to incorporate into teaching, and how we can use it to better have learning retention over a long time, and it's easier to evaluate also over a long time after that. So this is basically just a description of what we did with them, and so on, what metacognition can do. So as you can see during the first lecture, the cadets were asked to recreate the questions and correct answers. And at the end of the first lecture, the cadets were given an additional assignment to read an article, basically, and write a one-paragraph essay how I received maximum grade in this course. So basically, it's just a reflective task, how I could do better in this class, okay? And then during the second lecture, 10 minutes were allocated to discuss the main points the cadets took this assignment. So in total, less than 1 hour class time was spent on the experimental group to teaching them metacognitive strategies for learning cybersecurity. And they had tests, we took their tests, and we wanted to see the differences of their tests. And these are their test scores. So the test 0, as you can see, there's no difference between the two groups. The red group is the intervention group, and the blue group is the control group. And they systematically scored a lot better than the control group, just by giving them an extra hour of teaching on certain things. And they did better on all their exams. We're now in the process of seeing if these effects last over a year. So we're now grading we're seeing their final grades and seeing if these effects lasted over the past 2 years. So systematically over, except for test 2, there was no overlap of test scores on these two groups. This is over a whole semester, by the way. This is not over a week or anything like that. So very, very interesting in how to implement metacognitive approaches in learning for cybersecurity. We also looked at different aspects, so neurophysiological and emotional influence and team communication and metacognitive cyber situational awareness during cyber engineering exercises. This was done with the Norwegian Cyber Defense Group. So, for example, we see that people who have a higher, we call vagal tone, so basically heart rate variability is what we measured, and we wanted to see the more variability your heart is, so the heart reacts to the environment, and the more it's to be able to adapt to the environment, the more, I don't want to call them irregular, but the more the heartbeats react to what's happening around them, the more variable and the more capacity for adapting they have. Okay, that's one of the things we know within psychology, and we look at their communication. So people who were better at adapting, so who had physiological responses with a better adaptation to their surroundings, communicated better. They did better on metacognitive awareness and communication of that cyber threat around them at those times. HRV is not something we can improve, but it's something we can make more efficient. So, for example, how to decrease stress using different strategies and decreasing stress, that makes us more adaptable to situations. So we can also look at different neurophysiological and emotional aspects of cyber defense exercises. So this next project, this was actually a PhD student here at Caltech named Kaoud, who defended this a year ago in April. An incredible project. He's working at UMBC in Maryland, and what he basically did is he took how NASA satellites communicate with each other, and we applied this to cybersecurity or what's it called, networks, cyber networks, and we wanted to get a topology of that. So we basically wanted to see if it's better to use regular, what we know, cyber defense programs and monitoring software, or could we improve communication if we use different types of softwares? That's what we wanted to look at. And we chose a 3D model about this. So basically, if we look at it again, we're back at the cyber situational awareness. This is more of the model for cyber situational awareness and how that affects then information and communication. So how does having a 3D visualization of the network in front of you work? Does it help us understand, and does it help us perform and communicate better? That's what we looked at. So I'm going to show you here a video in a second, but that's basically what they saw is the 3D visualization up top, and the regular R-time monitoring program is at the bottom. So this is what's used at the bottom, the standard for today, and we wanted to test out something new up top. So Kaoud, he programmed the Lock Shields 2022 data for the Norwegian team into this, and we use that information there. I'm going to show you here a quick video of how this looks. This is using augmented reality technology. So basically using the HoloLens And as you can see, these are two cadets, and they're communicating and talking to each other. You can manipulate the nodes in the network just by grabbing it, walking around, and information will pop up in front of you with all the network information that you need, that you would also get in the 2D version if you wanted to. But as you can see, they can walk around, and all the information that comes up on the screen as you walk around. So each block is a node, and the green lines are data that is communicated between nodes. And the thickness of the green lines shows you how much data is being transmitted across those nodes and where are they going to. That's our colleague Ben, he's just filming, and that's code walking around. And as you can see, they're just playing around with the different nodes, and you can pick them up as he does there, and that information will come up on his screen on what he sees. And that's easy then to identify and communicate. That was our research question behind that, and we implemented that. So, what we did find basically is that people in the 2D did not communicate as well. The people in the 3D communicated the best. There was no misunderstandings. There was total shared mental modeling, shared situational awareness. They identified all the infected systems easily. That's obvious, basically. We're made for 3D processing. We're not made for 2D processing, and working in a 3D environment is much better than working in a 2D environment. The funny thing with this is we asked them, so what do you prefer? And as I said at the beginning, humans don't like change. They still prefer the 2D version because that's what they're used to. Yeah.
Can you draw like a conclusion or make it might be a sweeping statement, but if you reduce cognitive load, you make better decisions.
Yes, of course. You reduce stress, you're going to make better decisions.
Because cognitive load is also the amount of information, how to utilize it.
Yeah, so you can call it cognitive load. It becomes a stressor. So the more information you have to hold in your head, the more stressful it becomes. It becomes something you have to hold on to, which makes our cognitive resources less, and that then causes a physiological stress response. So yes, but they still would rather use the 2D version, which we found quite amusing and quite puzzling, but that's what it is. It's new technology. As you can see, these are IT and cybersecurity specialists. When offered new technology, would still rather use what they're used to. And that became problematic in some of this. But they did say that it would be easier to use this 3D technology to communicate with decision makers. So we're going to test this out hopefully really soon on how decision makers view this information also, if it helps them understand things better. Also, we looked at teaching pen testing to social science students using experimental learning techniques, more metacognitive aspects. As you can see, there's Kaya on here also. She used to be here at the Caltech. And we've also presented at the NATO conference for cognitive warfare, where we're using neurocentric systems approach for classifying goals and methods for cognitive warfare. So how can you use, for example, neuropsychological principles and attack those? And also, we just came out with this. This is with colleagues in Latvia and Lithuania. We're doing another run on this CyberScape 2.0 in a couple of weeks. So basically, using hard and soft skills and how that then makes them perform better in a CyberScape exercise. So what are the opportunities? I have a wide variety of brand partners that can be accessed, like NTNU, UPRC, but also other universities across Europe and also the States. So, for example, I do have a very, very dear friend, a good friend. He's the head of MITRE's Cybersecurity Human Factors Division. And he's a good guy. He'll love to do research also. And also you can use these networks for data collection. If you're a PhD student or even a master's student, there's networking possibilities, conferences. If you have to have some conference presentations, please come and see me. I can help you out with that. If not, at the Human Computer Interaction Conference, at other conferences that maybe have some relevance for you, but also help you get data collection and so on. And same with the MSc students. Recently, just to let you know, Tia and I were in Moldova. We've developed a cyber educator course that corresponds to the ANISA cyber educator role. So basically implementing behavioral science perspectives for improved cybersecurity awareness education in organizations. That is me. That's a crazy picture, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
I've never taken headshots, and this is the only picture I actually have of myself.
Okay.
I'm not very big on pictures. I look like a prisoner, I know. But the knowledge areas is basically helping people use different techniques in teaching cybersecurity. So for example, I helped them create how the design for education can be used and how it can be evaluated. Tia was there teaching them how to use tabletop exercises in their programs and how to then also evaluate those. And that's something we hope to keep going with. It's something I actually plan to incorporate here in the school here also. And talking to Adrian about this aspect of it also. There's some references, and thank you. Hopefully there's a lot of questions. There's some questions on the screen, I think. I'm going to stop recording now so I can see these questions that come up. Oh. Blue?
Yes.